Just to let you know, we it's a 30-minute limit just because we have a number. So we might kind of not rush through the questions, but
okay, that's fine.
It's, we'll see what
comes up. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So first of all, today is October the 17th, and my name is Osmin Hernandez. And if you could just state your name.
Sylvia Durante.
Alrighty. And we could start by asking, where did your family live before coming over to the U.S., or were they here already? Or?
Well, my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, she was born, I believe, in San Antonio. And I know that she lived in the Spanish Palace. Then when she got divorced from her first husband, she married my great-great-grandfather, and that's how my grandmother was born. She was born in San Antonio, and so was my mom. And so is all my siblings except me. I was born in Shawnee, Kansas, Ford Air Force Base, the Forbes Air Force Base, because my father was in the service. So then my sons were all born here. So that's our lineage through my mom. And then it's my father's father. He was born in between, the story was he's born in between Mexico and United States, because they went to Mexico for either somebody got married or it was a funeral. So his mother was pregnant at the time, so in between he was born. And then they had like 16 brothers and sisters after that. So they were all in New Braunfels. They all lived in New Braunfels, Texas. And so then they moved to San Antonio. And then that's it that I know about my great-grandparents.
Okay, all right. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Antonio, was raised in San Antonio, and then we moved up to Chicago. Okay. And then we lived in Indiana and Ohio. My father was in the service, so we moved around a lot. Okay. And then I end up here in Fort Worth, in 1972. Okay. So I've been here since then.
Okay. And what part of Fort Worth?
South Fort Worth.
South Fort Worth, mm-hmm. So around the seminary area? Or?
Yes, seminary area.
Okay.
I married my husband, Agustin Aurelio Durante Jr., okay. And his parents. Now, I know a little bit more about his history because I was in the attic looking at papers, and his grandparents came from Mexico, but I'm not sure what part of Mexico. And they were what they called migration, I think, from Mexico, that they came to Fort Worth to work at Texas Steel. Okay. And so his grandfather, I don't know his name, but he worked at Texas Steel. And I know for a fact that they bought property on Bryan Street and Main Street for $75 in 1909, because I was looking at their papers. So they had their green cards. I saw them. And he married my husband's grandmother, and they had like maybe eight kids. So one of them was my mother-in-law, so she was born here in Texas, in Fort Worth, and then it was my husband. And then they had about 6 brothers and sisters. So we grew up right there by the church, Immaculate Heart of Mary, on Main Street. I mean, they grew up by Main Street. Okay. And so they started that was all lots. And they were like, not the first, but the people that started South Fort Worth. Okay. So that's their history.
Okay, and what was the name of the church?
Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Okay.
They were all baptized there, and they were all members of that church.
Alrighty, and what schools did you attend?
I attended Polytech and Trimble Tech.
Okay, and how were those schools as far as?
Well, Polytech was my first high school here, okay. And it was maybe 90% all black, and there was only a few of what they call white, Hispanic. And I was probably the second Hispanic, but I was considered white because my skin color is a little different from regular Hispanic people. I'm considered white no matter where I go. So, I was one of them. But Polytech was a good school considering it was 90% black. I had a really good time there.
Okay.
Didn't associate with very many people, but they were really nice to me. Nobody was mean, not way back then in the 70s.
Okay.
So we all got along real good.
Okay.
So
now, as far as churches and everything you attended in the community was?
The only church I attended here was Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Okay.
And I've probably gone a few times to St. Andrews, but I'm not much of a religious person.
Okay.
But I grew up Catholic,
Okay.
raised Baptist, so I had a choice.
All right.
So.
Okay. Now, we went through that. Were you involved in any community or social or political organizations in the community?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I remember when I was in junior high school in San Antonio, there was a lot of things going on, but I couldn't choose because I lived both worlds. I went to a white school, and my family was Hispanic, and now I could go to the white schools, and got along with everybody, and then I would go to the Hispanic school, and didn't get along with the Hispanic people.
Yeah.
So I was in between, my sister, they're a little darker skin, and they got along with, they fit in with the Hispanics. I couldn't for some odd reason. It was just, I was always getting into fights for no reason. I was always in trouble.
Now, as far as, leaders of organizations or community activities that you remember, who are the leaders that you
The only one I remember was Henry B. Gonzalez.
Okay.
And that was in San Antonio. Everybody would talk about him. I think he was a lawyer, and he helped out a lot of the people in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. So that's all I remember growing up, that he was, for the people.
Okay.
So then the second person I remember is Cisneros in San Antonio. Here in Fort Worth, really never heard of, I've never needed anybody before to defend me of anything, so never heard people fighting or anything in South Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So.
And now, what about relations, looking more into relations between African-Americans and Hispanics? What were your relations with them, or with the community of South Fort Worth with the?
South Fort Worth really didn't have any very many black people in South Fort Worth, and now it started around maybe in the 80s. Mm-hmm. One of my husband's cousins, married a black man, which they're friends of my husband's. Texas Steel had a lot of black people, working men, and everybody got along. I mean, I don't see. There was a little bit of arguments, but I don't ever see anybody. Well, maybe we just had one incident that my kids were riding around in their bikes and their bike got stolen by some black kids. But otherwise, it's just hardly ever there was anybody in the community that were black. It was just mostly all Hispanics.
Okay.
So, but I've always got along. Like I said, I went to Poly, and so I never had a problem. Well, I might have had a problem, but it was smoothed out real fast, because I call it the Hispanic. They always said, they would call me the white girl, but I would tell them, you just don't know who I am. So then you have to fight in school to show who you are, and that's, once you fight, there's no problem after that. So that's what would happen to me. So after that, I wouldn't have no problems with anybody. So that's the way, that's just the way in the Hispanic, you have to fight to prove who you are. So.
Now, as far as South Fort Worth and the I guess the Mexican American community there, when did you start seeing more of the influx of immigrants there, Mexican immigrants? I
call my neighborhood Little Mexico, USA. I moved into my neighborhood, our house, 30 years ago, and it was mixed Hispanic and white people. And it was a really nice neighborhood, really nice, beautiful. That's why we moved, because it was a nice neighborhood, but mostly they were elderly white people. And once they passed away, they sold their houses, and then that's when the Mexican people moved in, and that's when our neighborhood turned a little bit. It's not as, I mean, it was bad in the 90s, but I would call the police and get it all straightened out, because there was music and beer drinking and partying. And so I kept it down, so I'm not liked in my neighborhood, because I like to have a quiet neighborhood. There's only about 3 of us from the neighborhood that originally were from, you know, we moved in the 70s and 80s and 90s, so there's only 3 people, 3 families that are there since then. And the rest is all Mexican people from other parts of Mexico. And it's constantly arguments every other weekend. So I feel that our neighborhood just turned, it's not our neighborhood anymore. Everybody's moved out. Everybody that I grew up in the 70s are not there anymore. They've all moved to other neighborhoods, and we remained there because, you know, my husband was born in that neighborhood, so we kept our house there. Okay. So, all right. But it's changed. So. Yeah. And
what area is it again?
It's by Barry.
Okay.
And Biddison, in between Barry and Biddison and Hemphill and I-35.
Okay, so I'm trying to kind of.
It's just, you know, right in the, you go up the bridge and Main Street's right, the next street. So.
All right.
Yeah, but mostly everybody has passed away, and like my husband and I, we discussed about how it was way back then, and his family were from Mexico, but the music wasn't as loud. I mean, people drank like way back then, but it wasn't as bad as it is now, where the music's loud and you hear the walls banging and booming, and so it's, you know, and then you go talk to them and tell them, can you lower your music? And they say, no, we don't have to. And I said, you know, it's past 12 o'clock. It's time for lowering the music down. And, you know, all we ask from people from other countries is just obey our laws and respect the people, and everything's good here in the United States. I have friends that are Pakistanians, and I have a friend from Sri Lanka, and Lebanese, Jewish, you know, and everybody gets along real good. It's just like they always say to us, you be respectful, we be respectful back, and everybody will get along. So that's, but when you don't respect our country and you don't respect us, that's when we have problems with people from other countries. So.
Okay. And now, as far as I see here that you have a lot with your family history, and I'm assuming that's.
Oh, this is just my iPad. I don't have all my father. It's been put in files. So I had to take some out, but I had my father's from the service on the iPad.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that, about your.
My father, he was in the Air Force, and we traveled with him everywhere. So it was a different life.
Okay.
The Air Force is totally different from just, you know, regular here. And my uncles all went to the service. I had my uncle Jesse Arriaga. He was in the Air Force for almost 40 years, and then my uncle Juan Arriaga, he was in it for maybe 10 years. And then my father from my mom's was in the Air Force too. He was, I guess, World War II. So mostly we were all military at one time. So, but my family, I and my family didn't serve for the United States. Just, you know, I was young when I got married, so I was going to join the service, but skipped out on that one once I had kids. So there's been 3 generations that haven't been in the service, so, which I regret.
And now, did your father grow up here in Fort Worth, or was it?
He grew up in San Antonio.
San Antonio.
All my family's from San Antonio, except for me. Well, I was born in another city or state, other state. And but I kind of feel bad because I'm not a Texan. I mean, I was raised Texan, but I'm not. I mean, you just don't feel like a Texan when you're born somewhere else. So that's the only thing. Everybody teases me about not being a Texan. Yeah. So, okay. But that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to, as far as share with us?
Just that my husband's family. He had an uncle that his name was Marcelo Araujo, and he was in the army, I believe. He was in the army, and he was a hero, but nobody ever knew about him. He was the only one that came back of his group, and he was a very nice man. He walked South Fort Worth like he was poor. He wore, because he came back different from the service, and he was given a lot of money from the service, but we don't know why. We don't know the history of what happened to him. But before he died, he almost died a millionaire. But people didn't know that about him. He, we just knew that the veterans would come pick him up and give him his medications and stuff. But his story has never been told. But he was someone, but nobody ever knew. And I think that story should be told about what happened to him. We just can't find out what happened to him in the war, because he never came back right. He came back what they call shell shock. And we just never found out whatever happened to him. And he was very important to us, because he was a very nice man. Even though he was shell shocked and had problems, he was always a nice man. Never did anything to anybody. And he went into the service when he was 18, but never came back right. I would like to find out what happened to him in the service. But he was a good man.
Okay. And served for Vietnam?
No, World War II.
World War II.
World War II. And his family came from Mexico, and his cousins, or his aunts, probably his aunt, moved to Chicago, and they never had contact with each other until they were in the service. And he met his cousins in some town in Italy or somewhere, and they found out they were cousins. And that was a good story, where, they found out that they were related to each other, and their cousins, their aunts, sisters, didn't know where they were. So that was a good story. That happened here in Fort Worth. That finally, after all these years, they would come and visit. But my husband's history is a lot better than mine. I don't know. I mean, I know a little bit of mine, but my husband's history is a lot better. But he didn't come. And but they were supposed to be related to Pancho Villa. So his grandfather and Pancho Villa were supposed to be cousins. And the reason his grandfather too came was because the Federales, I don't know if I said that right, were after Pancho Villa, and somehow his wife and some of his family got killed in Mexico. So that's why they came up north. So, and then he married, my husband's grandmother. So there's a story there, but I just, everybody talks about it, but we don't know. It's not been confirmed. So we've seen documentaries about the Pancho Villa and stuff, but that's all I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
Now, was your husband involved with anything at the community organizations or anything?
No.
Not the American GI Forum or?
No, he was never in the service. Just his uncles.
His uncles. Okay.
All his uncles went to the service.
Okay. They weren't involved in the American GI Forum.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that, no.
Okay.
Just that one Uncle Marshall. We call him Uncle Marshall, but his name was Marcelo Araujo.
Okay.
And but he was the one with the history that we would like to know. if anybody wants to, he passed away, and but they never told us anything.
Mm-hmm.
We just knew that the veterans would come pick him up anytime we called them.
Mm-hmm.
They would take him, fix him up, and send him home. And he would be fine, because they would give him his medication. And if he got arrested because he was out, people didn't know him, they would just go get him out of jail and take him to the veterans and give him his medication, and he would be fine. But people were scared of him because he was, long beard and dressed up, like he was homeless, but he wasn't, So, but that's the one we would like to find out about him. If you want to really history, that would be the good one.
Okay.
So.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I made a note of it on here, but I think that you happen to have anything else to share today, or I think we touched on everything actually.
I've never encountered prejudice really. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've been sheltered. I don't know. I hear all my relatives, my sisters, and all of them be prejudiced about stuff that. But I have, but it's really never bothered me because I would always tell them, if somebody said something to me, I would always, have a quick word to say back, and so they wouldn't, it was just never a problem. I just think that if when people have somebody that's being prejudiced, speak up and don't let them bother you, because I think I see it on television, but I've not seen it in person that much. When somebody says something bad, but like my family always says, because you pass for white. And I said, I don't pass for anything. I'm just who I am, and I just don't, I don't let it get me down. And they, because I went to Chicago, and I loved it up there. But my sister, she's darker skin, way darker skin, and they would make fun of her because she was of a dark skin. But I saw other people with darker skin, and they didn't get bullied. And I would tell my sister, because you let them get you down. If you just don't let them get you down, there's no problem. They'll like you. Just have to show who you are. And but I've never encountered that much, because, like I said, it's just another form of bullying. It's not. I don't think it's prejudice. I think it's just bullying when people do that. So, and sometimes you just have to show them who you are, and they won't bully you no more, and they won't be that. I just never understood that part where, I was watching, is it Carson? Where he said, if people just fought back. I mean, I was raised in the military, and then you just never let them get you down. And I've just always said that I don't think I could live in any place where people, bring you down. So, but Texas has always been a good state. It's always been the best. To me, it's the best state because I've lived everywhere, and this is where, it's a mix of everybody. So, and I'm not prejudiced against Mexican people. My next door neighbors, they're from Mexico, but it takes a while to teach. You have to teach them about music, about parties and stuff. Mexican people like to party, and Hispanic people like to party too. So it's but we just have to teach each other how to live together, and it's not bad after that. So my neighborhood's getting a little bit better, but somebody has to patrol it sometimes. So, yeah. But that's it.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess
probably not what you wanted to hear.
We have a wide range of,
yeah.
However you want to, make it. So,
yeah.
I think that we'll find a stopping point now, and